And here we are.
Here we are.
In the center of town.
Such specific 90s jokes of whoever was born in Israel at the time and watching comedy shows.
I mean, why not?
Why not?
Why not? It was mainly for you, so... opening theme. I don't have anything. But I'm not holding this by accident. We're going to talk a little bit about bass-related stuff today. So I have this really weird-looking thing here. It's a Hofner, apparently. It says since 1887. And this is pretty high-tech stuff for 1887. It's a travel bass that belongs to...
I personally had it since...
It's a family heirloom for generations. Yeah, my great-great-grandfather used to play in a funk band.
In the farm, on the horses.
Let's leave it at that. Oh, there we go. I was on passive mode. Is anybody even here?
We have a few viewers.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just keep on keeping on. So, we kind of have an agenda today, which is to talk a little bit about some actual products we're developing. We've always been intrigued how to bring a little bit of a natural feel to like digital products, right? So going back to our work with Waves developing virtual instruments, and I think generally like no matter what we did, we always looked for like that organic edge. And as soon as I walked in the studio today, Eyal showed me something really cool. He was like, check it out. And then he played something on keyboard that you don't usually hear a keyboard player playing, which is, you know what? How about we just go straight into it and show a little bit what I was so excited about. So we can kind of screen share, and maybe Eyal can give us like a walkthrough of this really neat MIDI system he developed.
Yeah. So actually, when I'm thinking about it, I don't even need to share the screen. We can just just do the audio. We'll just run the thing.
Yeah.
So first of all, I'll say that this is something interesting for us because we have a few products that we've been developing for a little while, and hopefully we'll start to get released pretty soon. But they're like, let's call them like bigger products, right? And sometimes I think one of the things we talked about when we started this is that sometimes we want to be able to, just capture the moment in development, right? Just come with something that organically maybe happens, and then just throw our ideas at it. And hopefully we're efficient enough in all the development stuff, design and whatever, so that we can just, get it happening and get it flowing, because sometimes development of something can take months, right?
Yeah, it's like a matter of understanding the different resolutions that products take. So a certain product that deals with a huge problem needs time to like develop also in our minds, right? To reach like to be ripe to a point where we know exactly how to solve all the problems and stuff like that. In the meantime, a lot of nice little ideas kind of pop out, and we have this flow between us that like in an hour we can go from I wonder if to this is what it looks like. So we can show some of that today. So you guys would have an idea.
Yeah. So this is an idea that the core for the idea I had a few years ago, because what happened was I was playing a lot of synth bass lines for a while, and there's a certain thing that was missing for this to happen. And let me play something and explain.
So Eyal has Ableton open.
Yes, nothing interesting is happening on the screen, to be honest.
But I'm still narrating.
Oh, okay.
let me enjoy myself.
Okay, so here's the thing. Let's route this the way it's supposed to be.
He's routing things. There There we go.
Great. I just don't have it in my headphones.
No, I don't have it in mine either.
1,
Oh,
2.
now
That is loud. Sorry.
a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a very familiar bass sound. Can I be really nitpicky and choose a different preset?
Yeah, sure.
There's one preset that
Bring it on.
I wish this plugin started with, that I made, of course. And it's called, I think it's this one. Give it a go. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the plugin that Or and I developed with Waves playing the sound. But this is like a general concept that I had for any kind of like bass or synth bass playing.
Right.
So what I wanted was, you know, this thing where a bass player, just, you know, when you're playing like rock or whatever, a lot of the notes, it's just like the same note, right? Like you're just playing 8 notes of like, but it doesn't really sound like how I'm playing it. Because there's a thing about playing notes or playing like 8 notes or whatever, is that there's like this continuous feeling, right, of playing the same thing.
Yeah, basically you're when I'm, you know, accompanying everybody forever now, you're constantly asked to play something like lines like that have a very, even though it's monophonic, like I'm not playing chords, there's a legato feeling, so there's no real breaks, and a lot of that has to do with the string is still vibrating while I'm plucking it, so there's no pause, there's no like this, it just goes on, and this is something that's quite difficult, if possible at all, to achieve with live playing. Maybe you can program something like that in Midi, which also won't be simple, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly, and it's kind of challenging to do in a keyboard. Like there's a technique, if you've ever played keys, to play the same note like in a normal speed, you have to do like something like this. It's kind of an awkward fingering on the keyboard or piano. You can study that, but even if you know how to do that, there's a bit of a problem because of how the key works. There's always a little bit of a pause, right? No matter how fast you're doing this. Like, no matter how fast I try to do this, first of all, I'm limited in my speed, but I have to lift the key a bit. It's pretty difficult. Like, it's just not natural.
But people at home are all around the world are now saying, wait, don't you have a sustain pedal?
Right. Like, you can use a sustain pedal. It should be somewhere around here under the desk.
Yeah,
somewhere, right? So the sustain pedal will work, but as you can hear, first of all, it makes the sound sometimes even too like sustainy, if you know what I mean.
Exactly.
Because like sometimes you do stuff like 2 8 notes and then a pause, like doo 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 doo,
like,
or something.
Oh wait, sorry. Like, or maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
A very common thing to do.
Yeah, and then if you'll do it with the sustain pedal, you'll get stuff like, right, and you don't really want that. What you want is, but not exactly like that.
So basically, there's like a huge chunk in the middle between the full legato pedal vibe and the complete staccato feel that we're kind of getting to bridge.
Right. So anyways, I made something. It's like the most basic thing in the world, but I made something that will make this kind of work in a way that I wanted to play. So it's like a MIDI plugin. I just have a little prototype here that I'm using. So what I do is, I wish you could see my hands on the keyboard.
We can tilt the camera. Oh.
Yep. So what I'm doing is I've mapped this thing now so that I have an octave on the keyboard that's duplicated, right? So I have the low. Well, I need to show my hands here.
Yeah, I think it's pretty instrumental.
Let's show the hands.
There we go.
There you go. So, right, so I'm playing something like this. Oh, it went down, right? And now it's going to be low again. So what this mapping allowed me to do is that if I'm playing this note here, and this note here is going to be the same pitch. So suddenly I can do stuff like that. right? So now I have like this repeating action, and I can play like really fast. Right now I have all this like same note action that I was never able to do, and I can mix it with like all kinds of like playing. Like I can do stuff like
Yeah, it really lends itself well to this style of playing. Like rock and metal is very based around the concept of playing against an open string, and I'll mimic with my hands because that's the part that people see right now. So rock and metal is very much based on using open. Next time we should have a top view camera on the keyboard, but never mind. So you basically you play against like several pitch areas against an open string, and that's kind of what Eyal was doing right now. And it's pretty weird to listen to a keyboard player doing something like this, because playing keyboard is inherently more about going for a different pitch. So wherever it is you're playing, you're always articulating against the next note in line, whether it's in a chord or a bass line or whatever. And that on one hand creates like incredible synth bass playing, so people that know how to play that well, I'm like envious of them. I listen to good synth bass players, and I'm like, wow, I wish I had that kind of mindset of always moving between the notes like that. And then when I listened to this, as soon as I got to the studio today, I was like, wow, that's somehow struck me as weird, even though it's such a, like Eyal called it, a very basic thing, that you basically he split the keyboard into the same pitch range twice, right? That's like exactly parallel.
Yeah.
And then what it allowed him to do is very unusual. So we kind of were, this is the essence of what ignited like our day, basically. And it's hopefully going to be like a small part in a bigger system, not a huge one, but like an idea that we can hopefully develop within the course of, I don't know, next month or so or something. That's what we hope for, at least. And then, yeah, this is like the playing system that we now need to come up with ways to use in a product. And bass lines has always been like a big part of our lives. Such a
for sure
weird sentence, but yeah.
Yeah, so here's what actually transpired. Like that all just happened today. So I've had this thing, right? This prototype, which manipulates MIDI. But the thing is, and by the way, I have a lot of like MIDI plugins like that, like laying around of all kinds of ideas that I'm doing. But there's some problem with MIDI plugins, even though I'm planning to do a few of those as well. But there's a problem with MIDI plugins in the sense that it's kind of hard to just patch. Like, for example, now what I had to do to get this thing to work is I had to open like 2 MIDI channels and then have one MIDI channel send the processed information into like the real synth, right? So it's quite it's like a little bit of a routing. It's not so obvious how to do it, and it's also like it feels like kind of disconnected from how we usually work. So we started to think like, hey, what could be cool with something like that? And we said, okay, well, if we do something like that, maybe it would be cool to maybe bundle it with like a sound source.
Right. Yeah.
Sorts.
So we started to engineer, like we opened Cubase and we started to kind of try and come up with cool sound that will complement this system. And naturally, as we said, like bass sounds was our go-to. And then we started experimenting with like very raw basic synth sounds, like saw, square, sine, like the basic waveforms. But then the acoustic edge that I mentioned in the beginning of this stream, we're always very intrigued by their kind of relationship between the transient and then the sustain of the note. And this was something that we discussed to no end, developing the bass plugins. And then we thought, like, what if we sampled several types of attacks? Like, I'm, kind of made a career out of playing bass in all kinds of weird ways. So there's like stuff like palm muting, slap, and each one of them kind of gives the note this momentum or of a different kind. And a few hours later, we played a single sample that made us say, okay, this plus the playing system equals something cool. Let's figure this out, right? So that's kind of trying to encapsulate the process, like starting from, hey, check this out, and Eyal is playing the bass line, and then, opening up synths, experimenting a little bit, playing a sound that we like in a very isolated environment, like just on Cubase, no samplers, no anything, and then kind of imagining 2 weeks in the future, saying, okay, we have this cool playing system that splits the octaves and it lets you do all these very cool bass synthy things. Then we have a sound engine that takes some inspiration from the acoustic world and lets you experiment with different types of acoustic attacks combined with synths. And then hopefully it's a sort of really fun thing for people to kind of download, experiment with. Maybe there's also, like, what I love about weird instruments, like the one I'm holding, is that you never, I know you're the same way because you've made music with iPads and with just about anything, with a piano, banging on it and doing all sorts of things. You never come up with your regular stuff, right? When you have like an instrument that works differently.
Yes.
So it automatically kind of places you in a sort of inspiring limitation in a way, right?
Yeah, I remember when I was in music school, I was learning songwriting, right? And I remember one time the teacher gave an assignment to write a song on an instrument that's not your main one. Like if you're usually writing on guitar, write on piano, or the other way around or something. And something about the other instrument, right, is really cool because like you're not used to it, your hands don't work as you think, the sounds don't come out as you would think, right? So there's something about like a different ergonomics to how you play it. Can be lots of things, by the way. And I've seen Joe Zawinul talk about that. Like he would retune his synthesizer like to like random stuff. Like some notes would be like I don't know, C# would be G and whatever. Like he would have to shuffle the whole thing around.
That's why his music sounds like that.
Yeah. No, but he's not, because he says that, well, I know the piano.
Yeah.
Right? It usually sounds the way I've been playing it. And then he came back and says, oh, I can I can bring a new what's the word, like a new angle. Like I can get like a new way to observe this.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I totally connect with it. Same thing happened when I switched from playing 4 strings to 5 strings in bass. So you have different spread of your hand. The neck gets wider. You get this extra string to put your thumb on and never touch. And then at a certain point, you're like, okay, this is here. I got to learn how to actually play it. And besides the extra notes you get and the extra range, you kind of discover that it makes a lot of things possible. And for instance, when I met Eyal, I'm really happy I was playing a 5-string because tons of Eyal's music, like kind of, I had no idea how people played that stuff with 4 strings sometimes, because they would jump through ranges and I could just go up a single area of the bass. So yeah, I had a lot of inspiration when I got my first 5-string. It's kind of a similar thing, but also, sometimes I like to pick up. I'm not that proficient in electric guitar. Like I can kind of play standard stuff. I just recorded like 4 songs on the electric guitar not long ago and was really excited about that. But then I find myself going to it a lot of time, even to the classical or acoustic guitar, just for that sake, because okay, I don't have the technique that I have on bass, but then this different instrument is kind of making me focus more about, let's say, dynamics or picking a really nice chord and really focusing on note selection. And hopefully instruments that have like a different system, even though it's a keyboard that we all know, can kind of bring that to people. Combined with our perception is that an instrument, sometimes it's good that an instrument comes like with its own kind of identity in terms of sound, that it's not just capable of producing anything, that it has this bank of predetermined sounds that really fit the style, But then if you want, we can allow also to like open it up to whatever synth you'd like to use it with, right? So that's our idea.
Yeah, because there's always this interesting thing about product design. Like, do you want to make the thing more open, or do you want to make the thing more focused?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and it's the same way in programming as well. Like you want to. If you say, okay, well, we'll let the user touch all these different things, it also means they're going to touch in all these different variations of the sound that aren't very, aren't very compelling, right?
Yeah.
So suddenly you're saying, okay, well, I'm going to limit the user and find the artistic places where they can do sound-changing things.
That's a really, sorry if I cut you off, feel free to let me know. But that's a really interesting point about product design, is we keep talking about what are you inviting the user to do? What kind of actions are you allowing? And there's the method to allow everything, basically, that the plugin or the instrument is an engine, and then, or I don't know, like a very complex car, and you're the guy driving it and shifting gears and taking care of everything and whatever. It's like a Formula One car. I remember we have a friend that's like crazy on that, and he taught us like they control the amount of oxygen going into the fuel. Yeah, it's like crazy amount of data. I'm like, you know what? I want to drive and get somewhere. So sorry for going on a tantrum, but yeah, the interesting point, going back to it in product design, is that you sometimes kind of draw imaginary lines or even real lines on a product and say, well, yeah, you can kind of hack it and do this and that, but the main thing we're inviting somebody to do is to play a really cool bass line. So how does every feature and every button represented on the UI kind of pay homage to that and invite you to do the choices that we think are artistic and conducive to like whatever it is we think the product should do. And then we're always excited to see people like saying, nah, screw that, I'm gonna do my own thing. And we're also fine with that, but it's our responsibility to make sure the product is like presenting itself in I guess the best possible way we can see it.
Yes, and yeah, so this is like where Headspace, I guess, is at right now. So it's just like, so what we've been doing is that we came up with this idea. We got excited. We started to throw things around, and we started like prototyping all kinds of like sound projects. So what we do a lot of the time is we'll try to fake the thing we want like the program to do in code. And I mean, eventually it will be done in codes, but we're faking it in like a Cubase project or an Ableton Live project or something. So yeah, so that's pretty much what we were at today. Like we basically started to say, okay, let's see if we can take this thing, find like a right combination of like maybe samples and synthesis, do some all kinds of like custom envelopes that maybe will just work for this use case, but will be pretty cool and will not require like a lot of complexities on the user side, so that we can have very clear sounding or very focused instrument.
Yeah. There's also the matter of working, like we're not developing this huge infrastructure like other products we're planning. So thinking about this as something kind of small, it's good for us to kind of zone in on what's like the best sound we can achieve with what we have now. And I think I can pat us on the back and say we're good like that. We can take a couple of elements and make them shine, and hopefully we'll be able to do that with this product. So we can also I don't know. Let me know what you think. We can break here and maybe try and answer some questions. We've had some on our Discord, our very active, very cool Discord server that you're very invited to attend and talk to all the cool people there. So I have the questions here, and I really should have wrote them down in advance because people send them in bulk, and then. So, I am Dom, I guess. That's the name. It would be cool to hear your takes on the state of VSTs for progressive music making as a maker of progressive-like music. I've noticed the barriers to entry into a digital environment are higher in some areas than some other musical genres. So basically, I think that's hitting the nail on the head for us, and a big part of the reason we're starting this company. We're also fans of this kind of progressive-like music, like he said. And I think it's an interesting question. What do you think? I mean, I always had the feeling that, talking about the discussion before, most products in the digital workspace kind of invite you to do certain things, and then they kind of assume that you'll find a way to do the other things. So they invite you to like write in loops and duplicate stuff, and then stuff like creating variations is very, something I know you talk a lot about. So
yeah, I feel like this is really the main problem we need to solve at some point, right? Or in stages. Because I feel like the technology has set certain workflows that are usually kind of anticipating you writing in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that, like you mentioned, progressive music is a lot of times is conflicting with the way that works. Like, I want to say classic way is, to me, like a lot of like music software is really baked into 4/4. A lot of it is baked into like things that loop in certain ways, whereas I think a lot of progressive music wouldn't, or even classical music or whatever, would not loop like that. It would be more fluid in how the thing works. And I think that's something that is really a matter of just expressing the problem in a correct way. I know it's maybe sound a bit technical. Like a lot of the problem we're trying to find is how do we express this in code and UI and whatever in a way that eventually we can describe how you're creating the music. Like, what is the process you're going through when you're creating something like, I don't know, Close to the Edge, right? Yes, or something, right? Something simple,
basic,
right?
like the first song you write.
Right, exactly. Maybe you have a Close to the Edge template on your first thing. So it's a problem we're going to try to tackle in stages. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to offer a few different things that will allow you to be very creative in hopefully in patterns that are harder to do now, right? So we'll try to do things where we'll open your mind and ears to this with all these like ways that will eventually could be combined as like one big toolbox for you to like express these things, and hopefully we can do it in a way where it's natural, right? Because that's I think really the big problem that I feel, at least, is that whenever you're going to the digital domain, you have to think like, oh, how do I reorganize my idea that I just naturally came up with on the piano back into like the
that's a really nice
Midi
way
or whatever.
A nice way you just described it. The problem. It's like okay, I have this idea on the piano that I play fluently, and then now I have to track it and write drums for it, and okay, I guess I'll write this 2-bar drum line and just duplicate it over the entire thing because I want to get to making music. And then again, when you're playing, we always say that like we come from playing in various bands like jazz, fusion, rock, whatever, where the music kind of happens and shifts and changes in less of a rigid way, right? So you don't have to tell the drummer like, hey, hit a crash when the part changes. Like a drummer that doesn't hit a crash when the chorus starts, like you have to do the opposite. You have to ask him to not play a crash when the chorus starts. So there's a lot of that, like again, bringing stuff from the organic, natural music world into our way of thinking. And I think also like a lot of genres of music have progressed to a point where, whether it's hip hop, R&B, metal, whatever, they've progressed beyond that point to where but a lot of artists right now are creating these very intricate loops and kind of cheating the system in various ways. Stuff Thundercat produces, we're big fans, and you hear some of that and you're like, well, I get like that this can be produced digitally, but there's a lot of stuff there that's a bit crooked, that's a bit, lopsided in the best way possible, and just like beautifully asymmetric, and right up our alley. And that's I guess it's a good question basically. So we're trying to tackle this problem specifically.
Yes.
We can go to the next one if you don't mind.
Yes.
So Alexei is saying, the question for me is, how would you improve the bass sampler you've done for Waves? Would it make sense to do a kind of an auto bass feature whereby MIDI notes are read from some track, and according to some style you provide an automated bass track with, say, Jam Origin stuff? It could act as an auto bass player of sorts based on live guitar performance. So you gave the answer as well.
I did?
No, I'm saying Alexei. It's just
he
asked the question and then said an amazing feature that we've kind of also discussed, which is, it sounds like a bass player is playing, and now it just needs to play.
Yeah, and you know what? This is there's an interesting discussion on that. Like now with AI and whatever, there's a big.
There's also a question here about that, by the way.
Oh really?
Yeah,
right.
From Alexei as well.
Yeah. There's a big thing now about like things that like this, right? You'll put in your MIDI track or the chords, and it will generate stuff for you. And there's actually really interesting projects that did something like that. Google had a really interesting thing that would generate drums. Like you can give it like guitars and stuff, and generates drums.
Yeah, Alexei put drumbot.glitch. We can check it out. It's supposed to accompany like the stuff you're playing on the keyboard.
There's a few projects like machine learning project did that. It's not perfect, but it's getting there. It will eventually get pretty good. Like I think, over time it will get to a point where, you load your thing and it matches some other thing. To be honest, I'm not so interested in that. Like I feel like even if I had it, I wouldn't be using it because I don't know. Maybe I'm a very specific kind of a person in that way, because I really like to feel like I've done the thing, like that. It's not like, because it's not like, because when I'm making music, it's not like I just want it to sound good and that's it. Like I need some good sounding music, because if I wanted good sounding music, I can just use pre-existing music or a sample or something, right? I can go to Splice and get a sample and just use the music. But I like the fact that there's something hands-on about doing music, even if it's like talking to a person, right? And I feel like there's so much to be explored in that, because I feel like most people, even like pro musicians, even people who like make hits, whatever, most of the things you do is like you by yourself getting inspired.
Right.
Like that's really most of your work. Most of it is not like being a professional producer.
Yeah.
For whatever. Most of the time you need something that you will react to, and then you make the music, right? Then you want the technical process to be shorter, right? That's for sure. Like you don't want to spend time doing boring stuff. That's not productive. But I feel like a big thing is the actual doing of the thing, right? It's just like playing a game versus I don't know, just watching the whole game, the whole playthrough or something, right?
So, but I want to make it difficult for you.
Yeah.
What if it's great? What if the AI thing is just playing the perfect drums for your track? Like you couldn't write them any better. Even if you started and you painstakingly took the time to place every hit, you would end up with something so similar to what it did that you know. Basically, the question is different. It's like, do you think like the thing that will be missing is the emotional connection for the time spent crafting the part, right?
Yes.
So, because the result, let's imagine that the AI would be at some point so proficient that it would play a really good drum part.
Yeah.
Like one that you would maybe even hire a really good drummer to play.
Right.
And, it's in terms of articulations and kind of picking up on nuance, it's supposed to be miles ahead of you, clicking like ghost note velocity, stuff like that.
And it will do that, right? We know that it will get to there and it will do that. So, but the thing is, I don't know, maybe this is just the way I see life in general, I guess. I think if that would happen, I would still do it myself.
Okay.
Because like it's like, I learned to play piano. Like pianists have always, like a lot of pianists play what I'm playing, like the same pieces, better than me. Better than I will ever play, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? In some cases, right? Like classical pianists and whatever. They're better, and I'm going to practice years just to get to a point where I'm playing a piece that I have a CD that plays it just the perfect way.
Okay,
But there's, but I feel like a lot of the bit about creating music, to me at least, is I want to feel like I'm the creator, and so there's a I think a fine line, because at some level there is a lot the computer can do for you and will do for you, right? But I think there's a lot to be said about how do you do this in a way where maybe it's high level, like maybe you didn't have to do like, boring stuff and write stuff note by note, but you feel like you've done it exactly the way you thought it. Like there's something to be said, like there's something that you've done.
So I really agree with that, actually, because it's like I don't want somebody to do the production for me, but I could really use a good production assistant, so somebody to write the notes for the song really accurately and well, and somebody to make sure that my edits are accurate, and there's all sorts of things in the creative process. Like my ideal way of doing things would be I like I like the old school stuff. I like to sit in a studio with a couple of really great technicians and a crew of great musicians and kind of communicate very professionally and get a lot of work done. And this is the sort of flow that the technical people, or in this case the AI, should just remove the cumbersome parts. So if you have a very skilled technician, you don't actually feel the technical parts of making music. So while you're talking to another guy, he's like doing the edits. So when he plays the track, you listen to something that's already, established, and you're ready to move forward. And I think that would be like the Goldilocks zone for people like us. So it wouldn't just play the part for us and would be like, great, next track or next song. And then it would leave us in this, very creative place that all we have to do is kind of come up with the deep musical concepts and maybe even write out the parts, and then all the tedium will be removed by this technical wonder that we've yet to see.
Yeah, and even the creative parts have a lot of like technical stuff in them or barriers that can be removed, right? Yeah. Like for example, if you work with a real player, right? Mm-hmm. You work with a drummer.
Yeah.
So that, because after you've played with the drummer for a while, there's a thing where you can look them in the eyes and say, hey, play hard shuffle. And they'll be like, oh, sure, I know what hard shuffle is. Like we've played 1,000 hard shuffles. Yeah. Or play kind of like that vibe. You know what I'm talking about. And he's just gonna jam it, and it's gonna sound exactly correct, right? And I feel like this is where you want to be, in the sense that this is where you've built like a connection with with your environment, with your music making environment. Like you have this connection with it that you don't need to be like so explicit with everything you said. You don't have to say, like, go to your drummer, like, look, bass drum on the one, open hi-hats.
If you do
like,
it's painful.
Yeah, it's painful,
it's
right?
It's awkward moments that you do that and everybody's watching. And like, if you've ever produced music, you know what we're talking about. The best band situations we've ever faced were ones where we didn't say almost a word about the music itself. Like everything was the drummer understood. Like we felt this way about Gadi, if you remember, Gadi Seri, which is a brilliant drummer and percussion player here in Israel. We played a couple gigs with him, and from the first rehearsal we were like, yeah, we can't teach him anything about playing music. Like there's nothing to be said. There's the actual material, and if there's a confusing bar of 7, 8, 5, whatever, we can kind of work through that. But that's not the conversation we're talking about right now. There was no moment where we were frustrated, for a second, and that goes for musicians like Omri. That also, we try to surround ourselves with people that make these conversations redundant. Like, you don't need to tell your melody player how to play the melody in such detail. That's the tedium we're describing also in the digital world.
Yeah, but the good thing about a player is, even with the best players, you have the option to say, well, you've done it great, but in this one bar, I want something different, right?
Course.
Or whatever. Or can you do this, and when that happens, respond to my hand gesturing, right?
Yeah,
right?
And then I'm offended, and I say no, and you don't respect me, and I leave the room, and I throw a bottle of water. all the things the best players do. Sorry.
Yeah, you go to the room with all the needles and.
Yeah. All that heroin that progressive music lovers do. That's unbearable.
Right. So this is awesome, but I think let's finish at that because I want to do some more coding today.
Yeah. Okay. We have one more.
Okay, one more.
Yeah. So Architech is asking about. He'd like to hear about the challenges of implementing sample-based instruments like oud, bouzouki. That should be a short one. We've discussed this at length. We don't really know, and we're sure that once we have the right musician here, we would first talk to him and record him for weeks to understand the intricacies and detail, same way we understood with bass playing. So the product started with just talking a bunch about the mechanical aspect of playing the instrument and what constitutes, what makes a bass player sound real and all that. So I guess we would do kind of the same thing if we needed to do a bouzouki instrument. We would first finding somebody that's super technically proficient and patient, because it takes incredible amounts of patience to sit and go on every note with different articulations and make sure the recording is clean. So it's a kind of question that we can't answer at the moment, because our approach isn't we'll just squeeze oud samples into our sampler and that's it. If we would do something like that, we would make an oud instrument that has the inflections and the imperfections and all the things that make oud playing great. So yeah, I feel like it's a kind of a specific thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's a bit of and even in the bass stuff we did, one of the things we did was, we limited the playing styles you can get, because we wanted to have all the, so much detail with the types of guitars and articulations and whatever that we did offer, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that will be the same case with any kind of acoustic instrument, because you can't really sample even a piano. You can't really sample a piano, or not to mention, a violin. You can't go to this kind of length or this kind of detail that will actually be truthful to the instrument.
Yeah, it's like a glass ceiling to how realistic you can make it. And then the other side, which is modeling, also has a different kind of glass ceiling, right? Physical modeling.
Yes, exactly. So when we make something like a sample instrument, you have to find a good medium of what's where can you put in the effort, mm-hmm. where it will actually give a lot of value and depth to a user playing this, because there is a level that you will not be able to reach with sampling unless you have unlimited man hours. Yeah,
and you're willing to download 200 terabytes of information of every, and program every possible. It's so infinite, the amount of possibilities even an acoustic instrument with 2 strings would have. It's crazy. The best example, I always feel drum kits kind of play a chord, even if you hit just one drum. So there's more than the bleed. There's the chord that the drum kit is playing per beat, per the person playing. So it's something so iconic that when it's the same kit and drummers change seats, I kind of hear a different chord. You know what I mean? Exactly. So the vibe of the entire kit is sending out something different, which I guess would be impossible to recreate. So that's, I guess, more to that point. Yes. So closing song.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and come again soon.
Yeah. See you next time. שכחתי להגיד